Gosh, welcome all of you. We have Eric Garcia, we have Hector Rodriguez, J.M. Hunter, Nicole Pizarro Colon, and then we'll have Stacy Robinson joining us. Welcome all of you. This is really, informal conversation, a space sort of clearing video cast for us to talk about kind of issues of Latinx comics creation, the significance of visual narratives, in this time of absolute total kind of, solidarity and protest in moving against these targets of oppression and exploitation. So anyway, welcome all of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, let's first of all just jump in here. All of you have been creating and educating, in your different ways, in your different spaces, using the comic book, the visual, verbal, graphic mode of comic books. And this seems to be especially pertinent and poignant today in all of our work. I wanted to just start with, Hector, who's the creator of El Peso Hero, and that's been, you've been in the news a lot right now. But Hector, how do you see your work kind of functioning in this space right now of Latinx comics and the Black Lives Movement, the protest, the pushing against, and the solidarity movements that are happening right now?
Oh, it's as a artist, it's just such a overwhelming task. I get these emotions, these feelings of frustration as a citizen within my community, as a member of the Latinx community. I hate seeing my mis hermanos, mis hermanas, in the Afro community, facing these. We're all together. Their injustices are my injustices. Todos unidos jamás serán vencidos. Together we will never go down. And so that's why it starting out with the epidemic. Very, very from the start, seeing these like forces of oppression, these injustices within the system, gravitating for, resources going towards certain members of the community, that by itself, and so this is why, as a, within El Peso Hero storyline, I tackle issues specifically with immigration, lack of immigration reform, and, the detention facilities, that are still very much present, and it's these injustices, that are currently going on that, they just, they go under the radar within the press and the public eye for obvious reasons, right? And so this is why in March and April, I pivoted towards the need to protect and inform our community about the need to help our for our essential workers, specifically our farm workers, and hence the El Peso Hero issue. The essentials dealing with the need to inform our community about how important our farm workers are and protect them, right? You see the ongoing issues with police brutality and the need for reform in those areas, so these been bubbling up, and it's sad that it took, a citizen such as George Floyd, to be a victim of that mechanism and be that cause to for change. It's very unfortunate that it has to be a life. Yeah, but
yeah, no, Hector, that's really, I'm glad you brought this up, because the thing that we don't see in the news right now is that the prison industrial complex and ICE in many ways are functionaries of a capitalist system that basically supports and promotes corporate, right, wealth. And
It's
right, yeah, go ahead.
no, right. And this is a form of runaway capitalist system that is foremost treating our communities as commodities, where
disposable commodities.
right, exact. So
Yeah.
where companies are thought as living things, beings. It's like what, and so it's frustrated, and there's a lot of need for reform there, especially with campaign finance reform and so on. But it's all these under layers that are
Yeah.
bubbling.
Yeah, I'm glad we brought this up. JM, you mentioned disposable, that there's basically a kind of, corporate algorithms where we are considered at a certain point like collateral damage, as long as the profit margins are made, right? Do you want to talk
Yeah.
about your work and where you're sort of seeing, your expression, your creativity happening within the spaces that are going on today?
Well, I mentioned before, but like the creativity and the work that I do in these pieces in particular are basically my pain. It's just when it gets so much and I have to release it, and then this is what comes out of it. I figure better this than something else, more reactionary and everything like that. My days of me trying to scrap with everybody are behind me, especially since I'm out of shape. I probably wouldn't win. But I mean, so I figure this is a more productive method, and this is what I try to advocate amongst my students, amongst my communities, and that art could save you, and then also could allow you to communicate. So like these are just paintings and pieces I've done, like the one with the fragmented sections that take from comic books is lyrics from the 60s and 70s that I kind of like picked and choose decisively which part of the lyrics and altered some to, because those were supposedly like radical eras, and yet nothing has changed. You know what I mean? So and then the Statue of Liberty hemorrhaging blood while people that are victims of ICE and other marginalized groups are caught in its path. As Liberty is blooded, and then obviously the police brutality one on the lower corner was a reinterpretation of another painting, which name escapes me right now. And then finally the last piece where it says Anatomy of a Minority. I, as an artist, I wanted to do Da Vinci's of Vitruvian Man and depict that in some way. I always thought it'd be like a horror icon like Cthulhu or someone I would turn into that type of thing. But then the real horror as I was doing this, it ended up being like the real horror is right here in front of us. It's what we experience. And the more I worked on this piece, just more things started coming out. Like rather than the circumference be like just a regular grid, and ended up being a target. And then the hands up, don't shoot. And then the Grey's Anatomy, with the knots, like the phrenology type of stigma, and how they used to think of us as like the Negro man being a certain type of beast or whatever, you know what I mean? So there's a lot of layers that went into this. And then on the right column, the sequences of these atrocities, but yet the spirit of Black people, the spirit of all of our people, trying to stem this back and to continue on, even though it's difficult, even though we end up with PTSD. And I don't know about you all, but anytime I see something on TV or another person shot, killed, or another person ICE raids another people, I just feel like a piece of my soul gets chipped away, and it's just like it feels like I used this in a poem recently, but like Atlas shrugged. Well, it's like Atlas said, "Here, hold this," and Atlas decided to go chug, and the rest of us are now holding this heavy burden, and trying to hold this globe up. So
While being beaten down
exactly,
simultaneously.
yeah, getting stabbed in the ribs.
Yeah, really powerful. Eric, I know you are a well-known muralist, but also satirist, cartoonist. Tell us a little bit about how you've been kind of responding, distilling, and then putting your stuff back out there for others to kind of find that space?
Yeah, so for the past 2 years, I've been living in Minneapolis, where this whole movement, I guess, exploded with the murder of George Floyd. And my work, you know, is always dealing with history and politics. So it's a weird setting to be in the middle of all of this pandemic, the uprising, everything else that's going on in the world and surrounding me and my family. And so I've been busy. I've been uh, coming up with a lot of different things because a lot of different things are going on simultaneously. So of course I'm doing with my political cartoons each week, trying to keep up with all the different hypocrisies and things that are being overlooked. Such as, you know, there's a strike right now in Yakima, Washington, with the migrant workers are facing, you know, ill conditions in conjunction with the pandemic. They're not giving them the right protections to protect themselves, to pick the food that we eat, you know. So, and then dealing with the immediate situation of George Floyd and the uprising, you know, talking about these 4 pigs that need to be brought to justice, and reconfiguring this, what justice is. What does that mean? What does she look like if she could be personified? Um, um, and yeah, just trying to keep up. That's all we can do. I'm trying to put out a cartoon every week if I have time. I'm working in conjunction with Just Seeds, so they can put out downloadable posters. So if you go to the Just Seeds Collective, which is primarily a printmaking political graphics organization, we're putting free posters up that people can download from anywhere, and then to be used for the cause.
Yeah, really powerful. All of your work. So Stacey Robinson is going to join us a little bit later, but we all know, of course, the significance of his work, and of course with Tony Medina and John Jennings. I am Alfonso Jones, which was in many ways the first, Black Lives Matter, Latinx Lives Matter, kind of synergistic graphic novel that really talks about the kind of, police brutality and this sort of the systemic oppression and exploitation that's causing and has been causing genocides. Hopefully Stacey will be able to join us. Nicole, as a PhD at OSU, working in the spaces of popular culture, Latinx, how are you feeling the weight of everything right now as an educator?
There we go. Okay, now you can hear me. There we go. Hi, hello everyone. So it's interesting because before you started recording, you asked us to think about how the current situation informs our work. But then I was like, I feel like it's more informing my worth more than anything else, which is kind of rare. Just listening to Eric and Hector and JM talk, I keep thinking about how art not only helps me understand my space as a grad student and as a thinker, I guess, a professional thinker, but also how it can help canalize, like JM said, anger, Hector, kind of hope, I guess, hope for reform, and how Eric was talking about our reality and like portraying the reality. A lot of my work, not a lot, but a chunk of my dissertation is going to be about the representation of Black bodies and Afro-Latinx bodies in comics, especially male bodies, and how very much like JM's Vitruvian Man picture, they kind of get sold to the masses in a very weird way, where this portrayal kind of echoes earlier representations of the Black body as a commodity or as a product to be sold. And it is fascinating for obviously all the wrong reasons and very painful reasons, how in this moment, with all the work that is currently coming out, you are hearing, and there's a spotlight on Latinx, Black Latinx, Black creators, because we can finally see their stories being told in a way that hasn't been as popular before, which I really appreciate. And also, the last thing I'll say, and I'll shut up, the comic book library, I think yesterday or like 2 days ago, shared on their Instagram feed a picture of a comic, cannot remember where from, but it was definitely about 40 years old. And it was a political cartoon of sorts of police brutality, and it just blew me away because in my own experience as a Puerto Rican, having experienced political cartoons that exploit or portray the relationship between Puerto Rico and the United States, and how that is seen in very disgusting and dehumanizing ways. It is fascinating to me how this conversation has been almost cataloged, I guess, for lack of a better word, because I'm thinking in Spanish right now for some weird reason, by comic artists. Like we see it, we can find those threads. That police brutality isn't a thing that's happening now. It's not a thing that's being just cataloged now because we have media. It's a thing that's been happening forever. And comic artists have been showing that work and have been cataloging that for longer than we can remember. And it's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, Hector, I see you nodding your head there.
Right. Yeah. And I agree. It's just, it's sad because I mean, just with the accessibility of technology, we're able to record these horrible moments. Like you said, this stuff has been going on, I mean, centuries, but now civilians have the opportunity to, use this as a tool to combat oppression.
Yeah, what I'm taking as well from all of this is that the power of our distillation, our recreation of something that is happening right here on our very doorsteps is a powerful way to push against a long history of being dehumanized, being framed as monstrous. We have our families, at the front lines, whether they're working in the fields or in post offices or as educators or in all of these different spaces. And yet the media still wants to, we're only functionaries as bodies, but we're disposable bodies, as you guys had talked about, because we're framed as dehumanized, as monstrous. We're only useful as as braceros. I wanted to draw attention to a little bit to the kinds of synergies in comics and mainstream comics between the Latinx and African American, the Latinx characters. Maybe Nicole, you could, whether we speak to some of the images here, like the Centurions or Miles or La Borinqueña or Cecilia Reyes, Hot Girl. Maybe you can talk about, there are spaces in the mainstream where we sort of push through and we see some interesting synergies finally that are showing collective histories in and through characterization.
Can everyone hear me? I'm not sure. Okay, because Dr. Olama got cut out a little bit. So I'm thinking about a lot of things because Dr. Aldama, how I am, I'm always negative. Like, that's just me. So I'll try not to be that negative. But while I do appreciate all of the representations that we see on the screen and in comics nowadays, because they're wonderful and clearly we haven't gotten them before, or not as in such a broad spectrum as we do now, I feel like there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, unfortunately. And so I don't know, I don't want to be negative, but I'm also like, because I keep thinking of not just Miles Morales, but also the ghostwriter. I'm thinking of these newer Black mantles that are being given to Black bodies in superhero comics. Why can't we make something new? You know, like, why does Captain America need to be a Black man now? Which is great. Like, I love it. Genuinely, I do. But I'm also like, why? Why do we need to take the mantle that was a white man's mantle? And you know what I mean? I don't know. I haven't decided how I feel about it because there are so many things to be said about it.
You're very right, Nicole. I agree. I mean,
Yeah.
think about it this way. You know, within the Latino community, we are we're huge consumers of the mainstream entertainment media, and you know, we a quarter of a ticket sales are from us, from the Latinx community. And I mean, and just to be, you know, put a focus on, look at the you know, mainstream success of the MCU, and you know, you have 10 years of these films being developed. You have about 20 plus movies. Not once was there a Latinx superhero character, which they had a lot of opportunities, but you know, we had, you know, like you said, that mantle, you know, from Captain America to the Falcon, you know, Black Panther being such a huge cultural success and amazing moments, you know, myself as an educator seeing, you know, students dress as Black Panther, you know, it's just very empowering feeling, you know. And I guess, like, you know, right now you can say that DC doesn't have a front runner Latinx superhero in any of its books.
Right.
And the film movies, nada, nothing. It's not there.
And I feel like a lot of my gripe with it is that it feels like it's retrofitting in a gross way. And so instead of making something new, something that's, I don't know. Instead of making something new, you're just changing the mantle a little bit to conform to whoever might be angry. And I don't love that. Even so, I remember a while back, I think it was a Fantastic Four issue that was run by Miranda Rodriguez, who also did La Boriqueña, and he kind of included a Groot being Puerto Rican, and being a Puerto Rican tree, which, you know, was beautiful to see, and it made me cry, not gonna lie. But also, like, why now? Why do we have to wait so late to, oh yeah, Groot? Yeah, he's always been here. He's always been Puerto Rican. What, you didn't notice? You know, it feels icky because it kind of feels like a slap in the face in a weird way. But I also feel like I should celebrate it. So I feel very conflicted about a lot of things. And it's the same thing goes for La Borinqueña, whom I love and adore. And I am so glad that we have her as in Puerto Rico, because we haven't had a Puerto Rican superhero before her. But why does she have to be New Yorican? Why can't she just be from Puerto Rico? Why can't she just be from the island? Why do we need this American savior that shares our roots, very much so, to come save us and to come show us what we have in Puerto Rico? So I feel constantly conflicted, and I don't like feeling like this, but it's, I don't know how I feel about it. That's where I'll leave it.
Eric, I know you want to say something.
I agree. I know what you're saying, Nicole. I have this same conflict with these newer characters that have just taken the place of old characters. I think the comic industry is actually in parallel with the United States government. Instead of making a new system, instead of creating a new government, we're just putting people of color in those positions. Barack Obama is a perfect example. Instead of changing the system, let's just put a Black man in the White House, right? I think there's parallels here that we can look at to see that, you know, new superheroes need to be created, new universes need to be created, new systems in the government, in our society, need to be created. They don't need to be put a person of color in place to continue the same system.
JM, did you want to chime in on this?
Yeah. So it's funny because you mentioned conflicted, Nicole, and I was going back and forth. At first, I was like, okay, I have a little bit of a counter to that, but then as you went on, And as Eric also chimed in, I was like, they're right though. So like, so it's like, maybe like I liked seeing Falcon as Cap. I like seeing the Ghost Rider. I like seeing these legacy characters be obtained by, by people of of color and other groups. But then I'm like, well, why do I like that? Because I'm starved. Like because there isn't that much new characters created in mainstream comics. And I think that it's the point where maybe I'm just like hungry for the scraps, you know what I mean? Like in the independent scene, there's tons of new characters and new content. But as far as the mainstream, the big two, there's not a bunch of new characters, and then a lot of us grew up with these legacy characters, right? So you have this thing of seeing yourself as Spider-Man, Wonder Woman, Captain America, whoever. But for the longest time, the reality is that those characters would never reflect what you look like, right? Because you're not going to see yourself, you're not going to really see yourself in those characters. I think that's why I started creating my own superheroes back when I was in 5th grade, because I wanted to see Black and Native American, and Filipino characters, that didn't exist. But then fast forward to this campaign where they started taking the legacy characters and putting, minority characters in place. And then it's almost like, oh yeah. And then not only that, then obviously that created Comicsgate and everything else. But I have to question why I'm so hungry for those characters to be in those legacy roles.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Nicole and Eric, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. And my conclusion is that because there's an absence of original characters, that
And it's not so much maybe an absence, right, JM, as much as kind of continued gatekeeping to all of the work that you guys are doing, right?
Okay, yeah.
Because it's out there. I also wanted to just add, I found out, and maybe this is not news to you guys, that the owners of Marvel, and there are it's a couple, are huge Trump supporters in terms of dollars, right?
Ike Perlmutter, or whatever his name is.
Yeah, and so adding to this kind of conflict, there's a real, I felt dirty after I found that out. Like literally, I had to go take a shower, these comics that we write about, that I talk about, that we interrogate more than maybe celebrate, but still giving it that energy. Gosh, we shouldn't probably be doing that, or I shouldn't. Culture side, right? People don't realize that our peoples, our communities are being suffocated literally and dying out, and through means of policy making, redlining that literally starves us and our families and our both Latinx, Black, African American culture side as well, right? Our kids are not graduating high schools. They're getting suspended and expelled instead of detentions, or even better, creative workshop spaces with people like Hector and Eric and JM, and making it to university classrooms where Nicole is teaching. Culture side, I know you all are moving against these brutal acts of culture side. Maybe we can start with Nicole on this and kind of move down, but tell me how you're responding to this.
Oh, how am I responding to everything? Well, right now I'm in chaos. So there's that. There's that answer. I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. But does anyone? It's hard because at OSU, you're obviously teaching, it's a PWI, we're just teaching white kids that very much so come from families that are not on my side. And they're also quite often coming to the classroom with hesitance or unwillingness to hear your side of the story. And you have to, it's a waiting game quite often in the classroom to kind of get them to a space where instead of feeling attacked, they feel like they're willing to join in the conversation, and they're is when you can finally have a productive conversation about race, about what's happening in the country. That may very well go against everything they've been taught up to that moment, because I teach freshmen and I teach people that just got to college. It's hard, and I try to live my life. How do I explain this? I'm gonna turn it really quickly to video games to see if this makes sense. Whenever I get a new video game that's like a life simulator, even if it's like Animal Crossing or something like that,
Yeah.
I start building and scrapping and rebuilding every building, every character to make them people of color, because that's my reality. That's the reality that I want to see. And so I try to go against the culture side by emphasizing works that they're not necessarily gonna get in every other English class they'll ever take, and trying to approach these texts as like, wow, it's this only one comic that talks about Black people and does these really cool stuff. No, man, let's talk about it. Let's treat it as if it has always been there. And how do we feel about it? How do we talk about it? But it's difficult, especially now. It just feels like I'm going against the current quite constantly.
Hector, you get them kind of at the early stages, you know.
Yeah.
Tell us about that so we can kind of bookend and then move to JM and Eric.
No, right. I mean, majority of my students, I mean, I work at a Title I, meaning that is a majority of students are of low socioeconomic status, first, second generation. And so very strong family presence, and families that are in the front lines, you know, working in the service industry, agriculture, and construction. Yeah, are essential workers. And so there's been, I mean, so many moments of deep frustration of seeing some of the challenges that themselves are facing. You know, when they come to my classroom, I try to provide with them with the essential tools they need to, you know, to you know, grow academically. You know, and I feel that my role as an educator, a Latinx educator, is to empower them and make sure that they know that they feel entitled for this education.
Mm.
You know, that they feel that it's their right, it's their human right, and so you know, I'm there, and as well as fighting with the current of some of the situations they're facing at home. You know, either economic, you know, ICE, you know, very, very scary stuff, you know. And so and for elementary students, I mean, some of them, especially with the you know, COVID pandemic, some of them were you know, holding their household together, you know, at home, taking care of their younger siblings, at themselves, trying to, you know, keep up with their own growth in education, you know, get on Zoom meetings. We're talking about 10, 11, 12-year-old kids, you know, they're cooking while while in class, you know, and it's very, it's just somber, humbling as an educator to see some of these moments, and then with a, you know, and then outside with El Paso Hero, it's just, I feel, I guess, a sense of ganas, you know, I get fuel, you know, speak for them, you know, speak for the unheard, and in this case with these, you know, essentials. And but yeah, I mean, that's me just in the urban school district area here in Texas.
JM, you just finished up your work with students, and I know you run. You're an art teacher, right? And so maybe, like, can you, you know, what are you doing in this space to reclaim, to affirm, to provide your your students with the tools for empowerment during this time, during these times and inherited times of severe repression?
See, how do I say this? I guess reflecting back, I honestly feel like I failed on that front, which is part of the reason why I'm leaving the teaching environment right now. I feel like institutional wise, like with the structure in place with educators or schools, that the high demand for testing and core four and things that just don't that while data driven appease the powers that be, like socially or artistically, art is the last person on the totem pole. Art is the last rung, and you don't get a lot of support. And then to have to go and march in step with the rest of the demands of being a teacher with the underfunded, overcrowded, I felt like I wasn't reaching my students. I felt like a failure, which is why I got burnout. That's why I'm leaving, and I feel like I failed. You know, and I've realized that maybe this isn't the way I can reach them. Maybe when I'm not under the thumb of a structure that or expectations or making sure to turn in grades at a certain time, that going out and working with the community like I do with SOLCON, like I do with YACA, Young Adult Creators Alliance, maybe, or I could do on my YouTube channel, you know, because then like outside of the classroom, in the classroom, I feel like a drill sergeant, you know, because just trying to maintain order, and that's not me. Like I got kicked out of my whole art department my senior year. I was banned. I'm the kid that gets kicked out and gets yelled at and gets put in detention. You know what I mean? And now here I am trying like I'm my worst nightmare now. And so, but outside of that, in that classroom environment, it's just all about bonding with the kids, art and love, and I don't have to appease like superiors or anything like that. I could focus on, like it's a whole different human quality, and I don't feel like I'm part of the system then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so my guilt drove me out of this, because I'm also a person like everyone here who's dealt with a lot of the same issues, grew up with the same issues that these young people have, and I have the PTSD and the issues that come from systemic racism, as well as just growing up with difficulties. And it was like I just didn't feel like I was serving the students as good as I could in this environment. So I finally had to I had to tap out, and I hope I can do better now that I'm not a part of that. It's going to hurt my family in the fact that there's a lack of income, but for the greater good, I needed to hit a reset button. So and I just hate, it eats me up that I had to get to that point, and that I'm not alone, that there's a lot of teachers and a lot of people that are at that point, you know, and so now I have to re-navigate and get back in there somehow to kind of to still, because those kids still deserve art. They still deserve a voice telling them that there's another route, you know what I mean? And I've got to figure that out. And I hope that's why I love SOCON so much, is because it kind of gave me a path. You know, there was like a light at the end of the tunnel, and showed me that that there's a way to do this. I just couldn't do that in that certain circumstances, especially with DeVos and power and stuff like that.
Eric, can you share some of the stuff, what's going on?
First, I wanted to say, Hunter, you know, I don't think you should be feel bad on yourself or be discouraged. I think, you know, it's a broken system, and if you chose to get out of that broken system, all power to you. You know, you do what you do. You're in the trenches. You're doing the hard work of teaching, and I commend you for that. So don't be hard on yourself. I think we're all trying to fight back against cultural side. I think we're all doing our part just by being creators, being alive right now in the time that we are in the United States. The United States has a full frontal attack on culture. Capitalism consumes everything. And just by being who we are in the academia or in the classroom or creating visuals and comics or whatever kind of art form you're doing, I think that is the counterattack to cultural side. Just to make our presence known is the defense, is the counterattack against cultural side.
Yeah, thank you all for sharing this deep insights. You and many others are really coming together in solidarity with our Black Lives Matter creators. Can you guys talk a little bit about how your work is doing this actively right now? Hector, let's start with you.
Okay.
Hector, yeah.
Well, I've been actually working on a small project, which is the first year of the 1 year anniversary of the El Paso attack. It's gonna come here soon, beginning of August, and so I think I owe it to our community artistically to just bring light again against the issue of gun violence and the radicalization of politics and these far right movements that are in war with our community, and it's very scary because it was very personal. I have family, friends, in El Paso, and not also that, but we do Texas Latino Comic Con. The end of here in the city of Dallas, the last Saturday of July, and this terrorist lived in Dallas, was looking for moments of opportunity with large crowds of Latinos, and lived only 10 minutes away from my house. So it's just disgusting the amount of hate some people can consume. And so with Texas Latino Comic Con, we try to bring light and support our community, and on social media, having platforms for supporting our brothers and sisters in these movements of cultural change. And I feel that as creators, artists, writers, poets, that this is our time to support our communities. And I feel that as it's just personal responsibility, that a community has given so much to me, that supported me so much, that I need to, we need to stand up and lift each other up, and go arm in arm and fight against these great powers of oppression that we're currently facing.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things as well is that our own families, we need to, one of the biggest struggles, and maybe Nicole, you can chime in after me here, is that within our own families, there's an internalized racism, and right? And you're like, my tia is Afro-Latinx, undeniably, and yet the family kind of, ignores or deliberately erases that history within our own family. Nicole, I don't know, tell us what your thoughts are here.
Oof, not, well, damn, oof, okay, so on that topic, there's a lot. An article came out yesterday in a Puerto Rican newspaper talking about racism in Puerto Rico, which is just a thing that we don't talk about at all. However, it's very ingrained in our everyday life, truly. My mom is Black. My dad is lighter, on the lighter side, but still a person of color, obviously. Then they're both Puerto Rican. And my mom, like, growing up, was subject to so much crap, to so much hatred, and got made fun of so often just for the color of her skin, even though she was gorgeous. My mom is gorgeous. And it's hard to have these conversations when my own grandmother refuses to acknowledge the fact that she's Black. And it's like these really hard conversations that they just refuse to have for whatever reason. Maybe because it makes their guilt better, easier to bear. Don't know. But yeah.
JM, you have you're Filipino, African American, indigenous. I know a lot of that comes out in your work. Have you? I mean, this is your very body is a kind of embodiment of the synergies, the confluence of cultures, of histories. But tell us how that is in your experience with your family, how you are decolonizing spaces that are proximate to you.
Yeah, I am the nexus. No, I'm kidding. And I have a very, very strong German-Hungarian, lineage as well. So yeah, it's like my grandfather, who's very German-Hungarian, met my grandmother in the Philippines, and he was in the army, and she was in charge of the dancers and the USO entertainment, and that's how they met. And then my mom, being half and half, met my father, who's Black and Native American. And then we just started doing this ancestry stuff, where I found out related to John Stewart, person who worked with Harriet Tubman and all that, and I had an ancestor come over from, I'm assuming, on the slave ship from Sierra Leone, and all that. So I've always been searching for an identity, being mixed, and not sure where I fit in. Either I'm not Black enough, or I'm not Filipino enough, or I'm not white enough, or I look, Mexican and then get yelled at for not speaking Spanish. So it's I can't win. But I've also, while there's a lot of confusion, there's still a lot of rewards having fingers in all these different types of ancestries and ethnicities, because I just love culture, and I love being able to learn about other cultures and embrace other cultures, and just I'm probably about to ramble and forget the whole question. I apologize. That's just kind of how my brain works. But I'm trying to put it all into my work, so I'm trying to just weave a tapestry of all these different influences. And
which is important, because you're kind of clearing a space for us to allow us to affirm.
Yeah.
Right. Eric.
What am I working on?
Well, I mean, this question, this kind of very everyday breathing, living moment where it's not just Afro-Latinx, Latinx, African-American Latinx. It's actually we in our own communities, our own families are kind of confluences of these histories, and yet the media and internalized racism wants to constantly divide us.
Right. It's sad when we don't realize or understand our history, and I'm always harping on history, because I think if you know your history, then you can understand the present, and once you understand the present, then you can move forward, right? So if you don't understand, you have this lineage that's so complex and so multicultural, it's very easy for you to be manipulated to think that you're something that you're not, right? We're all mestizos. We all come from very different places and demographics and races, and it's very sad when I see and I hear on the news or from friends in the community that there's internal racism going on between Mexicanos and the African American community, especially right now when they should be arm in arm, fighting in the same struggle, because we're on the same boat. We're both fighting for the same damn things. We've been fighting for these same damn things for decades, healthcare, mass incarceration, against the many different wars the United States have in place, external and internal. So there's all kinds of things that we could be fighting alongside each other for a greater purpose, with a greater power to make a difference against these struggles. But instead, the powers that be and the structures that be divide us and conquer us and continue to oppress us, because we're so fixated on our little intricate differences that pits us against each other. So it's
Yeah.
complicated, and it's also very simple.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, we have to look back in our past to understand things, and that's where it gets difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that we've all been sort of very involved in these spaces like SOLCON, the Black, Brown, and Indigenous Comics Expo, Latino Comics Expo, Hector Your, Texas Latino Comic Con, the Black and Brown Comics Arts Festival, the Latinx Comics Arts Festival in Modesto. Um, I see these as decolonizing, right? As, SOLCON, as, one of the reasons why I founded that with the help of JM and others is our African American and Latinx kids in Columbus never have a chance or a space to be together, to celebrate cultures and learn from one another, but also learn about their commonalities. Is there, Hector, as Texas Latino Comic Con, something in the Southwest, a very kind of, Latinx majority, where this kind of synergy, this kind of decolonizing space, African American, Latinx, et cetera, you tell us about that.
Well, it's, with comic book conventions being so popular, and it's these huge festivals of cultural events. And, we go back to the gatekeepers, and capitalism. And so with Texas Latino Comic Con, one of my main goals was to have an opportunity to open up and take away some of those walls financially, and have an opportunity for anybody to enter for free. And so it's very empowering, because I was, in order, as a creator, small press, struggling. I got to the point where, yes, I was being invited for some of these bigger Texas shows, and I have to, do grassroots. I have to put myself, and they they, on the list, not pronouncing my name correctly, or not pronouncing El Paso Hero, and so, yeah, I felt these moments, I guess, these microaggressions you come across, as a Latino artist here in Texas, in these venues, huge venues, where majority of the guests are Caucasian, Anglo-Saxon, Caucasian, and Protestant. I've experienced these, for a number of years, and I network. I have here in Dallas, Fort Worth, we have an amazing network of small press creators, LGBTQ plus artists, independent, incredibly forward thinking, embracing everybody, and so this is where we, as I reached out to my larger community for support, and they've been so supportive for Texas Latino Comic Con here in city of Dallas, and myself, just networking with the city, with the I guess the movers and shakers, per se, the Latino leaders here in Dallas, and that's all comes from I guess my work with El Paso Hero, and making allies, with reaching out to allies, and so I was able, with the help of David Dow, which is a small press with Dust Comics. He does great supporter. He also does a great show here called Women of WonderCon, with a amazing opportunity for our feminist community to feel uplifted and supported. Mm-hmm. But yes, it's ongoing, and so this year for Texas Latino Comic Con, especially for allies, I feel that it's a very important year for all of us.
Nicole, tell me, as a scholar who's participated in SOLCON, but also as someone, part of the, invited, welcome, the kind of ideal audience for SOLCON, what a space like that means for a, woman of color on her way to becoming an educator.
Oh my goodness. It's first and foremost an opportunity. Um, we've certainly talked about our gripes with mainstream comics here in this conversation a little bit. Certainly I have. So SOLCON is like this godsend, beautiful space where I see myself in a way that I'd never seen myself before, not only as Afro-Latina, but also as like a fat woman, and like all these weird intersectionalities that I have, I can finally see in someone's work. I remember, weirdly enough, from last SOLCON, the work that kind of stuck with me was JM's, because the anger and the pain is so palpable in his work that is like, I still remember his booth. I know where he was sitting. I know where all his work was, and like I could see it. I could see my pain reflected there in those pages, and it was unique in a way that is not accessible to a lot of people or available for everyone. It's a beautiful space.
Thank you, Nicole, for sharing that. Eric, you've been an artist there in that space, and JM also, obviously. Eric, I know you were there for the launch of SOLCON. What was that feeling like to see Latinx and African American creators right there, and then all these beautiful kids of all the shades of brown with us?
Oh, it was a tremendous experience. That was the same year I had went to the American Association for Editorial Cartoonists conference, and it was only a month prior to going to SOLCON, and it was a drastic different scene because the AAEC conference is majority white, older men, and when I came to SOLCON, it blew my mind. I said, "Oh my God, there's all these people of color, artists, creators, thinkers," and it was just a tremendous, drastic experience from that other conference. And my wife, to this day, who is not a comic book reader, says that was one of the best conferences she had ever went to, because it wasn't just about comics. It was about so much more. We had so much good discussions about culture, about politics, about what does it mean to be an artist in the creative field. It was all these different discussions going on. So it was a tremendous experience, and I hope to get back there once all this mess is out of the way.
Hector, you have some.
No, I have to piggyback on Eric. I still talk about SOLCON when I was there 2016 as a guest. It was such an amazing experience, and it was such a humbling moment for me as an artist. They're being with Keith Knight, Lalo and Sergio Aragones, with other, it's seeing the younger generation, embracing it and seeing themselves in these stories, our Afro Latinx Afro American artists, coinciding, just collaborating. It was I have such amazing. I have to. It was amazing.
Any last words on this, JM, as an artist and also someone who's been powerfully sort of shaping of SOLCON? Yeah.
Yeah. Just echoing everyone else, but then to add, so SOLCON was life changing. Like I don't say that lightly, or I'm not trying to be like hyperbole or anything like that, but it was literally life changing, and it was the final thing that made me said, okay, I'm moving to Columbus. This is what I want to do. This is where I want to be, like, every day. So I've said to you, and I maintain this, if I could create an atmosphere of SOLCON every day for the rest of my life, like the feeling I had at SOLCON, and I could communicate that to other people and make them feel that, then I I could die happy. That could be my legacy. And so to the point where with YACA, the Young Adult Creators Alliance, not only do I want a SOLCON atmosphere for everyone to experience, I also want to see our youth take over a show.
Mm.
I want us to be on the other side of the table, going to these kids, you know, and letting them make comments. So if we get them while they're young, you know, let's get them while they're young. I mean, imagine just what's going to happen, you know.
Powerful.
So that could be very, very, very awesome to see. So I think that's where I feel like my future lies, is becoming an advocate somehow.
I love that. Very powerful.
Can I add one more thing?
Yeah, please, Eric, please.
Dr.
Yeah.
Aldama, just by having SOLCON right in the heart of the Midwest, in the middle of the United States, in a majority white state, is a huge counterattack, a huge force against cultural sites. So I commend you for that, because the SOLCON itself is bringing about an awareness to all these different cultures, all these different beautiful artists, and that in itself is countering cultural site. So I commend you for that.
Thank you all for gifting your time, your knowledge, your experience, your artistic contribution, transformative ways that you exist in this world to unite brown and black communities in and through your comics, through your education as educators. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.